Hey, welcome back, everybody. Of course, you know me. My name is Dr. Keith McNally. This is Coach's Corner. I'm going to get this right because you know me with names. Vanessa Udelman.
I am here. I am excited, Keith. Thank you for inviting me to be on your show.
Absolutely. So I did get your name right. Yes, you are a leadership coach. Yes.
Yes,
And people who go into coaching, I've found in all of my conversations, typically because they've incurred some issue in their own personal life that said, damn, I could do this a whole lot better than you can. And is that something that we're going to share today?
absolutely happy to do that.
Please, please do it. So, how did you
Yes.
become a coach and why?
I know people ask me that all the time. If I say, you do what? A lot of people don't even know what a leadership coach is. So, what I do is I'm a leadership consultant coach, I am an executive coach. What I do is I go into organizations and I help develop leaders. And so, most people go to college, they go to university, they learn to be an engineer, they learn to be an architect, they become an IT professional, marketing professional, and they're really good at their job. So, they get promoted into a leadership role. And then they struggle because it's actually a different job and they just never learned any skills required to be a leader before. They've never had the training or education. And so being a leader is actually a different job, right? It involves coaching and developing people and learning how to give feedback and learning how to build a high performing team. All of these things are skills that you can learn. So that's what I do. Um,
Well, now I'm begs the question. Then I'm a bit confused. Not because you stated a pain point. People get promoted because of their technical expertise, but they're being promoted by people above them who are leaders, managers, and so forth, who've got the title and know what's expected. Is there something that what's going on there that when you promote somebody with a technical expertise and you expect them to do something that's they're not even familiar with?
what it happens in every organization across the globe.
Oh my God. What?
Exactly. Oh my God. That's why I've been
Oh,
a successful executive and leadership coach for 12 years in my business, Keith, because this happens in every single organization. And then you know what happens? Leaders struggle. They lack confidence, say, can I really do this? And when I meet them, that's where a lot of leaders are really feeling like they lack confidence and say, am I doing this right? And then once I say to them, of course, let me break it down because leadership is very complex. It's very multifaceted. And once I break down the components of leadership for them and walk them through and provide them with tools,
right.
it's so refreshing. They really feel so much more confident because they know they're doing it right.
So can you clue us in? What are some of those components
Sure. Yeah, for
of leadership?
sure. So it's interesting because when I started my business 12 years ago, I really had to think a lot about what those components are. And I literally went through all of my coaching notes. I've been coaching executives and senior leaders for many, many years. And I take notes, I set goals with them. So I looked at all the goals we've accomplished. I've done needs assessments, for 10 years. I looked at all the needs assessments and I literally put sticky notes on the wall and I thought, okay, what are the themes that I'm seeing in every leader across the organization, across the globe? And I came up with 3 pillars of leadership success that every leader really needs to know themselves. The leaders that are really high performing have very good self awareness.
Hmm.
They need to manage their teams, like give feedback and coach and develop their people. And then they need to lead their business. They need to be able to execute strategically.
Well, those seem like three very distinct, different
Yeah,
skill sets. Yes, no?
absolutely.
Then how do they all mesh? Like how does one fit with the other? And because that seems right now, talking to you, that would seem a bit overwhelming to have to learn in a short period of time,
Well,
especially
that's
if you're
that's
just been promoted.
well, I don't actually teach leaders I don't take people through those pillars in a short amount of time. The
Okay.
program that I run called that I run leaders through called the Mastering Leadership Program is actually an 8-month program because you're right. You're right. You can't learn leadership in a day. You can't learn leadership even a 2-day offsite. I
Okay.
had a client who said, "I'm doing a 2-day offsite. Can you come and teach leaders?" I said, "No, I don't do 2-day offsites. I don't do that kind of intensive learning. Because in my opinion and my experience developing leaders for over 20 years, it's ineffective. You were right. Leadership is very complex. It's multifaceted. It takes time. So when
Yeah.
I work with leaders, we work together for 8 months. We start with know yourself because it's foundational. If you understand your strengths, you understand your weaknesses, you understand how to build trust, how to develop your emotional intelligence, then you can start learning how to build a team. And then you can start thinking about executing strategically.
I'm by trade a college professor, and so there's very distinct models that I would use in the classroom so that, and I teach IT, so that my students would gravitate towards, oh my God, what the hell is this, right? To feeling, and as you say, I like the C word, the confidence, but I'll add the competence to being an IT professional. So there's a strategic way of moving somebody through a platform so that they have both of those two, confidence and competence. Um, it may take 8 months, it may take 2 years. What is that 8 month period for you? How does that break down into, you know, how do you start building? Because where do you build first? Do you build the confidence first or do you build the competence first? Or
Confidence.
talk to
Well,
me about that.
that's a great question, actually. They have to go side by side.
Okay. Can you
So
talk to me about
I,
that?
yeah, they go side to side because when you learn from the competent side, let's use the example of feedback, because a lot of leaders, I find that's a very difficult thing for leaders to give constructive feedback. So they tend to avoid it, right? So the competent side is giving leaders a tool to give feedback. So I have a very specific 4-step approach to giving feedback. So once they have the tool, then they feel competent that they can give feedback. Then they go try it and it goes well and it increases their confidence.
So, people who are looking to develop their leadership skills often have this angst that they're not going to like me now. At least people that I've talked to, like, especially those who have been promoted from their peers and now are leading their peers. There's this thing that, especially for men, and I'm a man, this ego thing that they're not gonna. And how do you get that part of the leadership element straightened out so that they really understand their role and their importance? I guess I'm trying to choose my words carefully because they're now in a new space. Does that make
But first,
sense?
how leaders, because that's so common, is when you get promoted and you are now leading a team of people who used to be your peers, your relationship with them will change.
Okay.
And that's
I mean,
okay.
it has to change. Yes.
It has to change. And that's okay. And guess what? They may not ask you for lunch anymore to join them. And that's going to be really sad for you. And
Yeah.
it's okay. Why? You're now their boss. Think of it from their perspective, right? So you now have to build connections with new people in the organization who are at your peer level. And if you have high trust relationships with those people prior to being promoted to their boss, I recommend people just have a very frank and open conversation about that. Like, hey, I feel a little bit awkward about this. Like, we used to be peers and now, you report to me. I wanted to tell you, like, very honestly, I feel a little awkward about that. Do you? And can we talk about, I want to coach you. I want you to have the best experience with us working together. Can we talk about what that looks like? And
So,
just
go
like
ahead.
what is that expression? The elephant in the room. It's like putting the elephant in the room and then dissecting the elephant.
I love it. I love it. So, leadership requires a lot of what you said earlier, self-awareness, personal reflection. How much of leadership, of being a leader, uh, does somebody need to invest? So somebody who say I'm going to take over a situation and I'm going to be leading X team. What type of process would I need to go through in terms of self-reflecting, self-awareness, self-knowledge, in order for me to step into that leadership position fully prepared?
For sure. I mean, the great expression that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at anything. And leadership is, I often use the analogy of it's a sport. It's like a sport. If you want to learn to play golf, you can't just hit a golf ball once. You've got to practice again and again and again and again and again and again. Tennis is the same thing. You again, any sport, right?
Right.
Leadership sport. You have to practice, you have to apply the tools. That's why when I run an 8-month program with leaders, we focus on one aspect of leadership. Let's say it's coaching. Okay. Then I give them the tools to coach their team. Then they have a whole month to apply those coaching skills. Okay. Then we come back and debrief. What did you apply? What did you learn? What went well? What didn't go well? I have a very growth mindset when I coach leaders and say to them, growth mindset means that nothing's set in stone. Fixed mindset, everything's set in stone. So if you have a fixed mindset, your belief is, I'm not a good leader, that's set in stone. Absolutely not. Growth mindset, nothing set in stone. You can learn, you can grow. Does it take hard work? Of course. So then we debrief, we say, what's working, what's not. People learn so much from trying stuff and it doesn't work. And then I'll say to them, okay, so based on that, what will you do differently next time? Okay, well, next time I'm going to try to do it this way. Terrific. Go do that. So I call it drip learning, right? You learn a little bit, you apply, we debrief. You learn a little bit more, we apply your debrief, and that takes time.
So can you talk about the 8 months, personal development, professional? How does that work? What is your program all about? What is it going to take somebody through?
So the reason it takes 8 months is we break down the 3 pillars. Know yourself, manage your team, and lead your business. So the first session, we focus on the first 2 sessions, know yourself. We look at, do you know the DISC profile? It's a self-assessment.
Can you share that with me?
Sure. The DISC profile is an amazing tool. It looks at your work style. So do you know Myers-Briggs? I know a lot of people have heard of
I'm a college
Myers-Briggs.
professor. I'm
So
familiar.
you have. Yes. So most people, it's probably one of the most impactful and popular assessments, self-assessments out there. Everybody's done Myers-Briggs. What Myers-Briggs assesses is your personality. Why I like DISC for the workplace is it assesses your work style. It's how I show up at work.
Okay.
So we have DISC stands for dominant, influencer, steady, and conscientious. And so you'll assess your tendencies at work. Do I tend to be more dominant? Do I tend to be an influencer and someone who's strategic and engages people and gets them excited about work? Do I tend to be someone who's steady, who really likes to be a subject matter expert, who really gets into the details and is a great collaborator and team builder? Are my tendencies towards someone who's conscientious, who's very analytical, more critical in their thinking, very task oriented? And so we assess their work style. And what that does is it teaches them not only what their strengths and weaknesses are, because every style, actually, what's quite interesting about every work style, your strengths, when you overuse them, actually become weaknesses.
No.
And people need to learn that, right? So, for example, Keith, do you know anybody who's very direct? You have people in your life who are direct?
Like outside of my mother, you know,
Okay, let's take your mother. What is great about people who are direct? How is that a benefit?
it's very clear as to what the expectations are.
Okay, now I'm not saying your mother overuses that strength.
All good.
But let's say that person, your mom or someone else, overuses that directness. How does it actually, only if they overuse it, how does it become a weakness?
Man, that can be so annoying and burdensome. Because there's no room for navigation. The
Wow.
the line is clear. It's pass fail, and high stress on the person who's got to do the work. Her
100%.
son. Her son.
Exactly. So when someone's too direct, then as a leader, they can appear to be very bossy, sometimes even rude, overly critical. And so those leaders need to really learn how to dial that back a little bit, their directness. So it stays in that zone of effective, but they don't overuse it. So it becomes a weakness, right? Like analytical people are the same. I mean, it's wonderful to be analytical, but you have to stay in that place of really doing deep research, but not getting into analysis paralysis, because that's when it becomes a weakness. So those are the kind of things that we start with, and that a self-assessment can help you with.
Cool. I like that. So you are 20-year veteran coach, leadership coach. We got to hear a story. Give me some success stories that when you left your client, they were empowered and ready to rock and roll. Give me something.
Okay, so a couple of good stories. One is, this is one of my favorite. I was at home and I got a call and I pick up the phone and the CEO said to me, help. And I said, what's going on? He said, I just had a fight with one of the people on my senior team in the airport in Miami, and he screamed at me in public for 20 minutes.
Oh,
And it was
gosh.
not pleasant. And this person has anger management issues. And if you don't fix this person, he's fired.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
no stress here, no stress. So I said, okay, let's continue the conversation and tell me a little bit. And we unpacked it. Anyways, long story short, met this person. He'd never heard of the term emotional intelligence before. He did not even understand. So go back to that self-awareness pillar, right? Zero self-awareness. He'd never seen a therapist. He'd never done any work on himself before. He didn't know that he'd never heard of emotional intelligence.
Mm.
I had to explain to him that your emotions, okay, so I'm going to define emotional intelligence, right? Emotional intelligence means that your emotions impact you and the people around you. He never understood that.
Mm.
So we worked together for an entire year. He would call me. I'd be in the car driving my kids to baseball, and he'd call me, be like, help. He was on retainer, this guy, right? Like, so, anyways, we worked together. And after a year, he got it. The light bulbs went off. He changed his behavior so much so that 5 years later, when the CEO retired, this person got promoted and is now the CEO of their organization.
Well, I'm hoping at some point in all of that year that he was working with you, that he was grateful that he kept a job.
Oh, he knew he had to change. He
Oh,
knew.
okay.
The CEO was very firm with him. He's like, improve or you're out. And
Th-
I got to credit him, because he worked really hard. A lot of times I find who would we call difficult people actually just lack self-awareness. I call them unconscious leaders.
oh.
They're just unconscious about how their behavior impacts their team. And so when I work with leaders, that is my key goal for all of them, is to move from leading unconsciously to leading very consciously.
With the limited time that we have left, I want you to leave our audience, those who are in a situation that they are recently been promoted to
Mhm.
that leadership position. And I know it happened, and I say that because it happens a lot in the technical fields like engineering and IT and whatnot, where you have strong technical competence,
Mhm.
but you don't necessarily have good people skills. Now, I'm going to get shot for that. Hopefully not, because people, my previous students and those who know me in IT, that's a reality. So I'm asking you, the professional,
Mhm.
somebody in that situation, give them a clue, a piece of hope, a nugget of gold wisdom that they can make it through today or this week.
Okay, for sure. I work with a ton of tech firms. So I work with a lot of IT professionals. I work with a lot of engineers. And what I explain to people is there's a continuum. So if you picture like a long line, okay, one end of the continuum is people who are task oriented. The other end of the continuum is people who are relationship oriented. And I always say to people who are on the task oriented side, you have to move, like, let's say your dot is right at that far end, right on that task oriented line. You got to move your dot to the middle. You have to be in the middle as a leader of being both task and relationship oriented. And so the question I ask each of the people I coach is, what does it mean for you? What will it take for you to move that dot from being completely task oriented to being more relationship oriented? And we brainstorm around that. For some of them, it could be, I need to give more positive feedback. That's actually a really, really good place to start. It's free and it's really easy to do. And so the pushback I sometimes get is, well, I don't need positive feedback. So why should I give it to other people? I hear that all the time. I'm like, well, this is not about you. And you have to realize 75% of the population is different than you. They're wired differently. That's what the DISC profile measures, right? 4 different work styles. Okay. So I teach people how to give positive feedback. So just tell people, I'll tell you exactly how to do it. When somebody goes the extra mile, positive feedback is not, hey, you showed up for work today. Great job. No, that's called a paycheck, right? Positive feedback is, who went the extra mile? What did they do? Who impressed you? Who made a really interesting comment in a meeting? Who's been working on developing something and you notice they're working hard and they're making progress? That's feedback is for, right? So what you do for positive feedback is you describe the behavior and then you explain the impact.
Wow, I
So
love it.
when, let's give an example. When you stayed late to fix that piece of code, the impact was, what would be the impact? Help me with that, Keith.
Something actually works. And that's
Now,
always important.
yes, now the impact is the client was thrilled with your turnaround time and their system's working again.
Yeah.
Thank you. See how that describing what they did and then explaining the impact to the client or the end user, et cetera, is so powerful for people. And then it reinforces the behavior. So that's a good first place to start to move the continuum from task over to relationship.
Vanessa, I wish you continued success as a leadership coach. And I want to thank you for joining me in conversation today. This has been another edition of Coach's Corner. For those of you who are watching and listening, I'll see you next time. Take care.